Hi, boys and girls. So today I am going to refresh your memory on Envisions 13-1. And this activity and this concept is going over equivalent fractions. And the nice thing is we ended with that towards the time that all the craziness started happening. So a lot of this should be a nice review for you. So we are going to start off with a video. And the video is having us think about this question. How can different fractions name the same part of a whole? So let's begin.
Different fractions name the same part of a whole. Think about this question during the lesson. The Chisholm Trail was used to drive cattle to market. Ross's herd has walked 1/2 the distance to market. What is another way to name 1/2? What information does the problem give? What do you need to find? The problem states that Ross's herd has walked 1/2 the distance to market. You need to find another way to name 1/2. Different fractions can name the same part of a whole.
I know you can break a whole into lots of different parts.
Fractions that name the same part of a whole are called equivalent fractions. Find the missing values. You can use fraction strips. The fractions 1/2 and 2/4 represent the same part of the whole. Two 1/4 strips are equal to 1/2, so 1/2 equals 2/4. Another name for 1/2 is 2/4.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video right now just to dig into this idea a little deeper. So what the person is saying is that if I put 1/4 plus 1/4 together, that gives me 2/4. And if you notice, it is the same amount. Some people call it the same name. Some people call it the same distance. So if this was a 0 here, it's the same distance as 1/2. 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2/4. So really when I'm looking at this, instead of looking at it as a fourth and a fourth, like we learned in previous lessons, we could name this 2/4. And because it's lined up the same, 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Or you might say 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Okay, let me erase this and we're going to keep going with the video.
You can find other equivalent fractions. Think about fractions that name the same part of the whole.
Okay, so before we move into the try it section, I want you to now practice, and I'm going to walk you through this. So let's pretend that I wanted you to find a fraction that was equivalent to 2/8. That means if I put these two together for 2/8, can you name a fraction that is equivalent to 2/8? I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. So 2/8, 1/8 plus 1/8 is equivalent to 1/4. So if I shaded this in, it would be the same up to this one. 1/4 and 2/8 are equivalent. Let's begin.
For example, 1/2 equals 4/8. Which fraction is equivalent to 3/4?
Select your answer.
So let's think about this one. What fraction is equivalent to 3/4? 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. Which fractions line up and are the same distance?
For eighths. Which fraction is equivalent to 3/4?
Select your answer.
So boys and girls, the answer would be 6/8.
3/4 equals 6/8. Now you know how different fractions can name the same part of a whole.
Okay, boys and girls. So now we are going to take that idea of using the fraction strips and looking at how they have the same name. And like I said, you might hear people say the same area, the same amount to compare fractions by finding if they are equal. So here is another example. 1/4 and 2/8 are equivalent because they name the same amount. So I'm going to bring my markers out here to show you this. So if this is showing 1/4, I'm going to shade it in. And it obviously is showing 1/4 because you have one shaded out of the four parts. And this is showing, 2/8. Look how they are exactly the same. They are equivalent fractions. So let's continue. So on this page, this is going to be continuing with 13-1. Here is number 1 and number 2, and I am going to do these with you. So they want you to identify what fraction is equivalent to 1/2. 1/2 is right here, and feel free to take your pencil or take a crayon or some kind of writing tool and shade in 1/2. Now, boys and girls, if you are doing this on loose leaf paper, because you are watching this online, feel free to draw these fraction strips to help you. So this model right here that I made represents 1/2. Go ahead and label a half for me. And they now want to know, what is the equivalent fraction to 1/2? Well, it's obviously not going to be a whole because that is much more large than the half. It's much larger than the half. But if I look below it, I have all these eighths here. 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. If I shade that in, oh my goodness, it is exactly the same size. That is going to be labeled with 4, sorry, it's so sloppy there, eighth. So that is the answer. 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. Let's do another one. Here is another fraction strip model. So they want to know 2/3. I can take these and shade in 1/3 plus 1/3, and that gives me 2/3. What is equivalent to 2/3? Well, like I said in number 1, it's not going to be a whole. That's much larger. But if I look under it, wait a second. All these 6 put together line up completely the same as 2/3. 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 equals 4/6. Now, that shows that 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. They name the same parts of the whole, or like I said before, they are the same size. They're the same distance from 0 to that end line there. Okay, so the bottom of those pages, or that page, gets a little harder because they took away the fraction strips. Well, boys and girls, check this out. I know that I needed fraction strips when I was learning fractions, so I have provided for you a model. Feel free to throw this up on your screen to look at this to help you complete these. This model is really going to help you. The only fraction strips on here you are not going to need are the ones that have the 5 as the denominator. We are not focusing on the fifths in 3rd grade. So we're going to do one together. We're going to do one together. So let's go ahead and look at thirds. We're going to just do number 5 together. So 1/3, I'm going to go ahead and shade in 1/3. I am looking for fractions that are the same size as a third. Is a half the same size as a third? No, much bigger. Is a fourth? No, much smaller. But I'm going to follow this line down. Do any of these line up the same length? Oh my goodness, they do. Check this out. 1/6 plus 1/6 is the same distance. They're the same size. So 1/3 and 2/6 are equivalent fractions. So boys and girls, you are going to continue with that method that I just showed you to complete this page, and feel free to use these fraction strips for any page you need help with. So the last thing I want to show you is the page behind this. This is where we are getting into the word problems. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that some of these are a little tricky. So I wanted to kind of walk you through what you have to do for these. So for the first one, for number 11, they want you to do exactly what we just did on the page before. And feel free to use this. They want you to draw an area model showing a fraction equivalent to a fourth. So to start, you want to make sure that your area model is exactly the same size. You don't want to come over here and make a circle. You don't want to make a big old square. You want them to line up. Then you're going to take this area model and break it apart and find a fraction that equals it. So I'm going to show you a trick. You start by making the top fraction. I broke it up into fourths just like that. Now I'm going to show you another trick. Try breaking it up in half. Now I've broken it up into eighths. Fourths up here. We already know that that shows 1/4. We have eighth at the bottom. What should I shade in so it looks exactly like the top one? Let's start with shading in 1. Well, would that make sense? Would 1/4 and 1/8 be equivalent? No, that doesn't even make sense. We know that 1/4 would be much larger than 1/8. Let's shade in 2 pieces. That matches. Those are equivalent fractions. 1/4 and 2/8 are equivalent. Let's move on to number 12. So for number 12, what I wanted to do, I'm not giving you the answer for this one. I just want to explain what to do. So it says, Joyce is thinking of a 3-digit number. 3-digit means it's going to have, sorry about that, clicking on crazy buttons here, boys and girls. It's going to have 1, 2, 3 numbers in it, or 3 digits. Her number has the digits 8, 4, and 6. So I am not saying that your answer is going to be 846. That is not what I am saying. I am saying you are going to use an 8, a 4, and a 6 to make a number. So that means you need to move these numbers around, reorder them to make a number that rounds to 600. Interesting. It's going to round to 600 when rounding to the nearest hundred. So try your best on that one. Next one I want to talk about is number 13. Number 13 is breaking it back to our multiplication and division time. So it says dinner plates are arranged on 5 shelves with 8 plates on each shelf. How many dinner plates are on all of the shelves? Now, boys and girls, it tells you to draw a bar diagram. If you are not comfortable with a bar diagram as your multiplication strategy, then you may do whatever method works for you. That might be skip counting. That might be a equal group model. That might be repeated addition, whatever works for you. However, you do have to do 2 things. You have to do some kind of strategy and you have to write an equation to solve it, okay? Last one we're gonna go over is number 14, and this is the big one. And normally if it says higher order thinking, you know you're gonna do a lot of thinking up here. So it says, Fred says that 1/2 and 7/8 are equivalent fractions. Now, boys and girls, before you even go any further, I want you to think about that. 1/2, picture 1/2 in your brain on a model, and 7/8 are equivalent fractions. Just already visualize that. Let's keep going. Draw area models for 1/2 and 7/8 to show if Fred's statement is correct. That is your first job. You have to draw area models for 1/2 and 7/8. That means your models need to be, remember, the same size. So maybe the top part is for 1/2. Sorry, guys, sometimes I get clicking too much. And the bottom model is for 7/8. So there's your first job. Second job, name, or first off, you're telling me yes or no, is Fred correct? So after you've done your models, then you need to figure out, okay, is that statement correct? That's your third job. Your last and final job then is to name 2 fractions that are equivalent to 1/2. So you got a lot to do on this one. If you need it, boys and girls, I have this beautiful, beautiful fraction strip model here. So if you are a friend who is getting stuck and you're not sure what to do, please reference that, okay? All right, boys and girls, so that is it for our lesson on 13-1. I hope that what I have gone over has helped you. Good luck and have fun.